Welcome back to the channel. It is Sunday. It's time to look at some recent sales on eBay for CGC graded comics. And we've got one PSA comic, PSA graded, that I wanted to talk about as well. And for some of these, I did also pull up the Go Collect data. You'll notice that there's a Star Wars #1 in an 8.0. And you're like, why is that? Well, if you look in that top left corner on the thumbnail at that Star Wars book, you can see that it is a 35-cent variant. And that was a really surprising sales price. And it makes me think that there is another level to the 35-cent price variance for Star Wars #1 now based on this sale. So we'll get to that as well. But in between there, you know, some of these books, I've just picked out a few that I thought were worth talking about, or at least mentioning, books that I thought were pretty. And the first one fits that bill. That is a Jack Kirby cover. This is from 1968. This is Fantastic Four #72. It's not like a huge key issue or anything, but it's just an awesome cover. It's an appearance by the Watcher and the Silver Surfer, but it's really about that cover. It's a beautiful cover. And that one sold for $1,600, off-white to white pager, 9.4 grade. Pretty high grade for a 1960s book. And the price reflected that. But I think there's just enough people out there that still care about these 1960s books, that care about collecting Jack Kirby covers. And there is something about Jack Kirby covers that really are striking. They're simple, but they're eye-appealing, and it's got its own vibe. I don't know how else to explain it, but that is certainly one that I've always liked. Now, here's a big one. So this was interesting that two different issues of Detective Comics #233 sold in two different grades. One a low grade from David over at Collectors Comics that was a 3.0, only cream to off-white pages, but this is the origin and first appearance of Batwoman. This, again, is from 1956. Pretty great cover. It's kind of a silly, fun cover, but I've always liked it. Batman and Batwoman are racing to the mission, and, you know, it's not for everybody. I get that, but it does have a certain appeal to it. Sheldon Moldoff cover, and I've always loved it. 1206 for that one, but literally almost the exact I think they sold the same day. If not, they were within a day of each other. But this is from Blizzard Comics. And they had a 6.5 off-white to white pager, which is a pretty big copy. I mean, that's a pretty big grade for a 1956 book. And presents very nicely. That one sold for $29.15. So to go from a 3.0 cream to off-white, 1206, you got a little over two and a half times that to go to a 6.5 off-white pages. And again, that one sold for $2,915. Another one that's always my favorite, and we're going to take a closer look at the Go Collect data to see how this one stacks up versus other recent sales in the same grade. That's Batman #227 from 1970. Pretty amazing Neil Adams cover. This one was an auction. 6.0 off-white pages. That one sold for $733.50. Which felt like a pretty fair deal to me. Now, it was off-white pages, and so I did pull up the Go Collect data, and this one sold again for, let's call it $734, which is the lowest price between the 90-day, the 1 year, and the fair market value average. Now, I think it's worth looking at other books, though, that have sold, and you can see that this one was a cream to off-white pages that sold best offer accepted at $750. That was back in October. So this one went for less, was better page quality. So that's interesting that this book has kind of come back down just a little bit. But, you know, when you look at the sales history for this book, it's just on a steady incline with obviously peaks and valleys here and there. But in general, the trend line is up for this book, and that bodes well for pretty much any grade. And really, once you get down into the low grades, it starts being valued right around the same price. I mean, it's not a huge difference in price once you get down in the 2s, the 2.5, 3s, 3.5. That's, you know, even those prices, there's not much significant difference in the fair market value. When you get in the 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, then you start seeing a little creep. But really, for anywhere from about 4 to about 6, it's kind of within a pretty narrow band. And it goes up pretty significantly once you get into the 7.5, 8 range, 8, 8.5. I mean, then you start getting into some big boy prices. And anything over 9, of course, is the same thing. I think I just saw, I can't remember if this was on Heritage, which I believe it was. Could have been Golden, but I'm pretty sure it was on Heritage that they are getting ready to auction off a 9.6 for this book. So that will be an interesting sale. I'll have to go back and look and see where I saw that. But I think I got the email, so it must have been on Heritage that we've got a 9.6 coming for this book. And there's only 26 of Batman number 227 in a 9.6 grade. So I think that will probably be a pretty attractive sale because it doesn't come up enough. The last one was in January of 2023, and I bet it's up from that price if I had to guess. But 55.20 was the last sale. I bet we clear $7,000 would be my guess. Depends on the page quality, which again I don't remember what it was, but I know that one's coming up pretty soon. Some X-Men books I wanted to talk about. We've got X-Men number 14, the first appearance of the Sentinels. I've always loved this cover. And 7.0 off-white to white pages, you can pick it up for $5.50. I think that's a great buy. Great buy. That's a price I'd pay in a heartbeat. And one of my favorites is Giant Size X-Men number 1. I do have this one, I think in a 9.4. It might be in a 9.2, I can't remember. But this is the first appearance of the new X-Men. Great cover. It was listed for $32.50. It sold at $27.50. And as you can see, this book is so plentiful. It's from the 70s. Lots of copies in very high grades that are out there. And so this book has dropped off the face of the earth, kind of come back down to reality. So $27.50 in an 8.0. Again, this one had white pages as well. So I thought that was a pretty nice buy relative to where this book got up to. I mean, this book got up to about $5,800. What is it? Is that right? Present dollar value. The highest price was in February of 2022 at $8,900. That's present value. But, you know, the price at the time was $78.50. So at the time, this book sold in an 8.0 at $78.50. Now you're picking it up for $27.50. So huge drop in this book across all grades. X-Men number 108 is another cool one. That's kind of a secondary key. This was a 9.8. This is the beginning of John Byrne's run on X-Men. So kind of a important issue. Very stylized cover, kind of like elongated art style there, but pretty cool. It's got a lot of the major heroes on there. Nightcrawler and Colossus and Cyclops and Storm are on there. So I almost said Storm Shadow. So that one, we'll come to that in a second. We got a G.I. Joe book coming up, but $749.99 on that one in a 9.8. So again, not a huge important key, but 108 is a book that if you follow the X-Men books, you kind of know that's kind of the beginning of John Byrne's run. And that's a great book. This was a real shocker. I could not believe this sales price. So it's X-Men number 142, admittedly in a newsstand, signed by Terry Austin and Chris Claremont, but it's also signed by Hugh Jackman. Now, if this was a newsstand, X-Men 142 in a 9.8, signed by Terry Austin and Chris Claremont, you're talking, what, $1,500 max? But because they got Hugh Jackman's signature on there, and that's the silver signature that you see on the cover there, there you go. That's a good angle there. That's Hugh Jackman's signature. It's kind of a weird signature. But this book sold for $35.57, 5,000 Canadian, which is $35.57 US dollars. That feels like a massive overpay to me for whatever it's, again, I'm not saying do what you want with your money, but a newsstand blue label, you're talking in a 9.8, you're talking what, $1,100, $1,200 max for this book. I've seen them go for under $1,000 in an auction in a newsstand. So $3,500 just seems like too high of a premium to get two common signatures plus Hugh Jackman. Now he does have the sketch, which is cool. You can see that sketch there. That sketch was by Terry Austin. So it's kind of like a Hugh Jackman sketch, or a Wolverine sketch, excuse me. But I still think that number's way too high. Very cool. sometimes a lot of people don't want the sketches. They just feel like it ruins the book. I would kind of, on this book, I think that's probably my opinion on it as well. I'd rather have it signed by Chris Claremont and Terry Austin and Hugh Jackman, but not have the sketch on it. That would be my preference, but somebody was willing to pay big money for it. All right, so we got our first PSA graded book that I don't know if I've covered any others. And I don't know about you guys, but I can't do it. I just can't do it. I can't get past the label. I hate the PSA labels. I hate them. And they look so B-team. They look so like done in your garage with the type font. The red label is also a turnoff to me, although it does look nice with this G.I. Joe book because of the red to the book. But I am not going to pay CGC 9.8 prices for a PSA 9.8. I'm just not going to do it. I don't like the way it looks. It looks like crap to me. Now this, you got some good stuff going on here. Like this hologram and all this. If you put the hologram on the front and improve the type font, this type font looks so dot matrix printer. I mean, what is going on with this? I just cannot get past PSA labels. I haven't bought any PSA graded books because I just can't do it. I'm sorry. I just can't. I mean, it's not going to happen. I hate the way they look. And maybe they end up taking over and beating CGC. But the way that, like, this should be the front, like the top, on the back of the PSA labels, I love the blue hologram. Put that on the front along with the QR code, but improve the font, okay? Because you can barely read it right now. Even the front you can barely read. You have to zoom in on it. So I am not going to buy any, but I just, man, they got to do something with these labels. Anyway, Newsstand 9.8 G.I. Joe #1 sold for $9.45, and I was curious to see if Go Collect tracks this data. I know that they could track CBCS data, but PSA is right here, and they do have it in here. One sale at $945. That's the only sale from PSA. So now, even you compare it to the 9.8s for CGC, it's actually above what a CGC book sold for the last 30 days. So that's interesting, is that the market, at least, well, I take that back, because this one had off-white to white pages, so it should have sold for less. Now, if you look at the last white pager that sold, which was not that long ago, it was in October 27th of this year, that one sold for $10.50. So, okay, so that makes more sense because this one sold for $9.45. Or you can call it about a 10% discount versus a CGC 9.8 newsstand. So take that for what you will, but I do find that interesting that, apples to apples, this one had lower page quality, so it should have sold for less. But the last 9.8 that sold, CGC 9.8, that one sold for about $100 more. So interesting information, but I just, man, I cannot stand those labels. Cannot do it. Next up, Amazon Amazing Spider-Man #238. This was a newsstand 9.6, sold for $640, which I thought was actually a pretty decent deal, given that the 9.8 is 2.5 times that number, which is about right. But for a 9.6 of this book, that's a price I'd pay, $640. Pretty nice book there. Now, I wanted to dig in on the Go Collect data for this one, because this is about as high as I could go for a newsstand of ASM 300. This was a very nice presenting copy, very nicely centered all the way down the right-hand side. All of the 300s are perfectly aligned on the cut, and it was freshly graded newsstand edition 9.6 that sold in an auction for $16.52. And when you look at that, the last 30 days, the last one was $14.52. So someone paid up for this book. They paid a $200 premium, but look at the edge on this. It's perfectly cut all the way down. That never happens. It never happens with ASM 300, direct or newsstand, where it's so perfectly centered everything. It's just the OCD in me with that 300s on the cover, that when you see it perfectly cut like that, I would pay $200 premium for this book. That was a really nice copy. So I can understand the premium. Now, when you go from a 9.6 to a 9.8, the multiple is just too big for me. I can't do it. I'm going from a 9.6 where $1,450 to $1,650. For a 9.8, you're paying $8,500 to, to $8,500 to $9,000. I mean, that is a huge premium. What is that? I can't do math, but that's a huge premium. So I'm not paying that for it. But a 9.6 I would do. I would pay that price for a 9.6. Very nice copy there, though. So it sold for a premium. Now we got to dig into the big boy. Okay, now look at this. $12,000 is what this Star Wars #1 35-cent price variant sold for. I do not track these. I do not keep track of the 35-cent variants because it's just, they're so expensive that I'm not paying like half of a new car for that, or not, maybe not a new car, but a very nice car. You can get a decent car, okay? You get a decent car, not a junker, for 24 grand. And I'm not spending 12 grand on a comic. Maybe I will one day, but not yet. I'm not rich enough yet. So this 8.0 white pager, it sold, again, 35-cent variant that you can see there in the upper left-hand corner. So it sold for $12,000. Now, I wanted to look at the Go Collect data, and this will shock you. So again, this was an 8.0, admittedly, with white pages. The last 8.0, they do have a fair market value at $8,000. $8,000. The last one that sold was in March of 2024, so about a year and a half ago. It sold for $8,075. A year and a half later, the same book is going for 50% more. 50% more. It sold for $12,000. That is a huge jump in the last 18 days. Now, that is on par with an 8.5-ish, a 9.0 in the last 90 days sold for $19,200. So to go from an 8.0 to a 9.0, you're adding about $7,200-ish. So this is a new kind of price high for the 8.0. Given that just, again, 18 months ago, it was going for 50% less than that. I mean, that is or maybe not 50%, but it's $4,000 less than that. So that's a huge number. But, from March to now, you've got a 50% return on your money if you had bought this copy, assuming all else equal. So that's a huge data point for the 35-cent variant at a mid-grade level. They don't come up enough. And when they do, oftentimes you see that happen. So I would be very curious to see what some of the higher grade books go for. There hasn't been a 9.8 yet. The last 9.4 sold for $36,000. The last 9.6, no track data. So there's no track data for a 9.6. So again, the last 9.4 sold a year ago for $36,000. Wild. Absolutely wild. To some more affordable books, I thought this was a pretty decent deal at $218.50 from High Quality Comics. I bought from them. Great seller. This was a newsstand for Star Wars #39 in a 9.8. Pretty decent deal at $218.50. This was another big sale. I forgot to look up the sales price on it, but I just wanted to at least show it. This was signed by Todd McFarlane, Stan Lee, John Romita, and Hal Tripe. Awesome. Awesome book. Herb Tripe. I don't know. Why did I say Hal? Herb Tripe. This was a beautiful quadruple signed copy, 9.6, 1,600 best offer accepted. That's nice. That is nice. Honestly, I'm not going to lie. Okay. If I had seen this, I probably would have made an offer for it. I probably would have offered $1,400 for that book. That is amazing to get all of those signatures on a 9.6 on it. White pages too for Hulk 340. And then finally, we got a newsstand, New Mutants 98 in a 9.8. This was a newsstand again, and that one sold for a big number, 2024. Admittedly, in a buy it now. Typically in an auction, they're going for 1,800-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. So first appearance of Deadpool in comics, but 9.8 newsstand, 2024. I still think in an auction you could probably get it $1,800-$1,900. That's the last data point that I remember for this book in an auction. So anyway, just wanted to cover some recent sales for CGC and one PSA graded book. Let me know in the comments what you think of the PSA label as well. Talk to you soon.